You ever just feel like no matter where you turn, there just seems to be problems all around you at all times, guns blazing? Whether you look over there, you've got minor inconveniences, petty annoyances, or you look over there, you've got catastrophic problems that make you question your entire existence. Because if you ever do feel like that, I feel exactly the same, and it seems each and every day there seems to be something new, a new time sink for me to go invest time and attention into, to no avail, no return on investment. So in this video, I'm going to share my perspective on how I deal with those problems, share a couple of those problems so you can see that everybody has bloody problems, and it's annoying to everybody, right? It just comes down to perspective and like having a mental model and a framework to deal with those problems and how to see them. So in this video, I want to give you that mental model and that framework. So next time you have a problem, you grin because you know you're already one step ahead of that problem, and it's not going to beat you in this game of chess that is life, and you are going to get the checkmate.
I'm going to make Monday morning my bitch.
I want to start with time sinks, and what a time sink is essentially, you've got your day structured out, let's say. You've got X at 10 o'clock, Y at 12 o'clock, Z at 2 p.m, blah, blah, you've got your day sorted out. A time sink is something that you didn't plan for, or perhaps maybe forgot, and now you've got to tend to it, or maybe you feel like you've got to tend to it. Like for me, for example, having like OCD, I don't like to diagnose myself with things. These are just like little parameters to give you a bit of context. But like, you know, with the whole idea of OCD, so when I see something, I feel like I've got to tend to it. So like, say for example, I'm walking around my apartment and I see that, you know, there's no toilet paper out on display. So now I've got to deviate from my routine, go on a, you know, digression, go to the wardrobe and go and get toilet paper and fill it up. That's just one example. And you know, it could be infinite amounts of these. I might see there's dishes from the night before, now I've got to go and do dishes. Then I realize I've got no food for the day, now I've got to meal prep. Or like I've got a parcel arriving, so I can't actually leave the house until the parcel comes. It's just loads of different time sinks like that, right? And essentially, I try and keep track on as many of them as possible by just like, you know, writing it out in my diary, for example. Like I've got a daily, let me show you what I mean. I don't know how much you can see, but here we've got like, this is just the structure of my day to day. So I've got great I've got my meals, I've got what I'm doing moment to moment, and then at the top here I've got different things I need to look out for throughout the day. So like, you know, chores I've got to do, tasks I've got to do. So even if I don't do it that day, I feel in control because I can see it and I'm aware of it. So that's how I try and keep track of my time sinks. It's just having an infiltration system. David Allen talks about that in his book Getting Things Done. He basically categorizes all the things he's got to do. So that's what I do, right? I've got chores, I've got tasks, I've got deep work, which is like work what requires a lot of attention, a bigger task what probably has a lot of subtasks. And then I've got like light work, which is just easy little things you're bouncing around to do, maybe replying to a certain email or just doing things what don't really require much attention. Maybe you can do it kind of mindlessly. So I try and break up all the different tasks just to give me clarity. And that's something that I built a habit out of, just, you know, going on. Because it can just seem like there's these constant things what keep showing up, what you got to keep paying attention to. And it's just like, you can't get anything done because you're spending so much time just fritting around doing loads of different random tasks. So that is time sinks. I want to talk about minor inconveniences, and these normally turn up when, for example, you're learning a new skill set or you're doing something new that you haven't done before. Like, you ever notice when you're going to do something new, one, there might be an element of fear there, like the fear of the unknown. It's like you don't know what you're about to head up to. So maybe you're trying to like solve the problems and stuff preemptively. Like you're trying to solve problems before you actually go in do the actual thing that you haven't done before, which can lead to procrastination, right? Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of that. Like when you're doing something that's new and uncomfortable, you're like, oh, like maybe I just need to prep more, like maybe I need to do this, maybe I need to do that, and you just kind of stall. Because oftentimes when you actually get to do the thing, you realize it's way different to what you actually anticipated, and it's just like, that's just stupid. And then the big part is, moving forward, when you go to do that thing again, you've got a point of reference now. You've got cells of recognition in your body, so it's not actually going to be as hard. And you've actually set the foundation for how you're going to go about that thing again in the future. When you're facing new things and new tasks, there's just these problems. But like I said, you just got to kind of dive into it, because those problems and that feeling of unknowingness doesn't really go away until you go and do it and build the cells of recognition. It's literally all it is, that discomfort is just coming from the fact that you don't have any cells of recognition. So I want to go on this point deeper and explore, like when you're doing something new, how there can be loads of just different problems that you need to face, which maybe perhaps you're not aware of when you first start out. For example, when I first started swimming, one of the one of the initial problems is that, you know, I can't swim. That's the issue, because obviously you need to learn how to swim, right? So I had to learn how to swim, and that took a long time, right? So that's one problem. Another problem is I hated the cold water. So every time I'd go into the cold water, it was like a battle to, and what you notice is for all the people that take cold showers, it's always a battle that you can't override only by actually just doing it, overriding the ego. The ego is the voice in your head that's like, I don't want to do it, it's cold, how can we prep for this, like what can I do before to make it less painful? But sometimes you just got to dive into the pain and just shatter the resistance. The resistance is your hesitancy to delve into the pain. Like, you want to avoid the pain as humans. We are pain avoiding animals, and we try and do things as easy as possible, as automatically as possible. So, you know, any form of pain we're going to resist. That is resistance. So to overcome resistance and overcome that pain, you've just really got to dive through it. And then there's this framework, what I heard about the other day, called the 3-minute rule or something. Like, you've got a task that you don't want to do. If you just get started, after around 3 minutes, you won't want to stop. So that's a good principle to dive into as well. There's also this whole idea, I know a woman built a whole career out of this idea where, like, when you wake up, for the first 5 seconds, like, that's the crucial decision or something. So within that first 5 seconds, you've got to like jump out of bed and start the day. And apparently if you do that, you crush the day. And then you can take that mindset with everything else, whether it be going to, you know, jumping in a swimming pool, like it's freezing, or jumping into a cold shower, it's freezing. So just do it within 5 seconds, like you've got to do it. I know it can be hard, but that's another mental model. It's not really one that I follow so much, it's just one I'm throwing out there. Maybe you could resonate with it, I don't really know. I want to dive into a different problem and use my business right now as a reference, my own marketing agency. So this has been a mother beat, right? Because in every single stage of agency and in this business model, what the gurus don't tell you is that there's problems everywhere, right? So there's problems everywhere. For really trivial ones, like, I don't know what to name the business, I don't know what logo to choose, I don't know where to go and get my logo done. That's one problem. You get that sorted, you're like, okay, cool. Like, do I need to incorporate this or not? Do I need to make this an incorporation? Or, like, you know, what I'm trying to say is you don't know about different tax structures. You don't know about private LLCs and companies. You're not aware of being a sole trader or a sole business person. And then you've got like the pay-as-you-earn employee. Like, which one do you choose when you're starting your agency? But that's another problem. And I understand a lot of you are probably barking at me right now, like, oh, you don't need to start an agency. You don't need to start a company until you start getting clients and blah, blah, blah. But what I'm trying to say is there's stages in which there's going to be problems. The next problem would be, okay, I actually don't have any clients. How do I get clients? Maybe you get told to do outreach. What outreach method? That's another problem. Like, which one do I choose? What niche do I choose? That's another problem, like, right? Like, there's constant problems that you're facing. So it's like, okay, cool, you've picked a niche. Now what outreach? Maybe you pick cold calls. Okay, cool. You do 100 cold calls, and then you realize, crap, I don't have a clue how to do this, and this isn't working whatsoever. So now you got another problem. You don't know how to do cold calls, and you realize, other than agency, cold calling is a skill what seems completely separate to agency and business. So now you've got to learn about cold calling, learn about structure. If you're not naturally extroverted, you've got to learn about structure, like how your tonality, the speed in which you're saying, the conviction, like what it is you're saying, guiding the conversation, removing ums and ahs, like building authority. Like, there's all these different things that you need to focus on when it comes to sales. And if you're not naturally social like how I am, this can be quite a problem, right? And what I'm trying to say is you don't really expect these things. And going back to the person who's procrastinating on maybe starting a business in general because they don't know enough, how are you supposed to learn all of these different problems until you go and do it? You can't solve these problems preemptively. You don't know what you're going to name the business until you're actually in that moment. You don't know how you're going to do a cold call until you're in that moment, like blah, 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 blah. But let me carry on with the narrative. Maybe you've spent time learning how to cold call or whatever else. And actually another thing is a problem as well. What offer are you going to offer to the businesses? What are you going to provide to them that is actually of any value and they need, to an extent to which you can sell them on? So that's another problem. You've got maybe that solved. Maybe you're doing cold calls, and maybe you feel like you've learned pretty good cold calling skills, but what you realize is you've got to do like 200-300 cold calls to even get a sales call. And then you realize, oh crap, like, A sales call is like the next step. Like, you're not going to be able to sell a business on £1,000+ service on that first call initially. So it's about like sales, is the sales process, right? So that's another problem. You don't know about the sales process for it. This is just an example. I'm not saying you don't actually know. I'm not saying I don't actually know. I'm just giving an example of how you can just be seemingly infinite amounts of problems in any given sphere of your life. Right now I'm focusing on business. So like I was saying, you've got this idea with the, and we call it outreach, this whole idea of calling up the practices, or like what method you're going to choose, and then going on a sales call, blah blah blah. It's outreach. And so the sales call is a different process in itself, and there's like industry standards and stuff for how you structure a sales call, how you ask for the payment, going silent after you announce the price, asking the right questions, letting the prospect, letting the lead, or letting the dental practice owner, for example, letting them speak the majority of the time. And it's not actually hard selling tactics, because probably maybe if you're not in the sphere of sales before, you've got this misconception when it comes to sales, because you've got this idea of like a car salesman, or the salespeople inside them technology shops which just constantly badger you and ask you, is there anything you'd like to know about, is there anything you'd like to see? And then you're being constantly pressured, and then there's this idea of like you need to use manipulation tactics to get the sale and blah blah blah. So you're gonna have all these false notions which need to be shattered and completely like reconstructed. So this is problems in itself. Say for example we sweep all of that to the side and we actually get to the meat of the topic, which would be, okay, I've actually got the client now, and maybe you got paid initially, which is going to be very low odds, like, right? Usually you have to do like some kind of free trial or something, because you're not going to get a sale, you're not going to get a prospect outright usually. Not all the time, you can override it sometimes. Maybe you've got a background in sales and you can actually pull it off, but mostly you're going to have to lead with free trials just to build up your conviction when it comes to the service, what it is you're offering. It's like testing and learning, right? You can't really learn about service delivery until you've gone out to a practice and actually, for example, a practice, or you've gone out to a business and actually gotten them good results with advertising. This is just an example of the business, what I was saying. So say you've got the free trial and stuff, you're like, oh crap, wait, I actually don't know how to service deliver the client. So now you've got to learn about, like, say for your offer you've chosen Facebook ads, but you don't actually know how to run Facebook ads. You don't know anything about creative, you don't know anything about A/B testing, or the Facebook learning period, or targeting, or copywriting, and you don't know any of this. Or like, how are you going to capture the leads when you're running these ads? You're going to use a Facebook form. What kind of Facebook form are you going to use? You're going to use a high intent one, rich creative, or a basic one, or you're going to go on the landing page as Facebook and then add a Google Pixel to track the metrics. Like, what are you going to do? So this is another problem in itself. And then you've got, that's one problem about service delivery, whatever else. I'm not going to go into much more detail. But then you've got the problem of like client retention and then like scaling. Maybe you're doing all the work yourself and you're like, oh crap, this is taking up a lot of my time and I've only got one client. How am I going to scale this to £100,000 a month, for example, which is roughly around like maybe 90 clients? How am I going to do that if I'm spending so much time? So the other issue you might be facing is like, how do I scale this? How do I systematize this? How do I hire people? Like, how do I get that done? How do I make sure the people who I'm hiring are actually talented? And obviously, a lot of these problems you need money for. This is the magic thing about money, right? As soon as you get money, a lot of your problems kind of go away, because now you can outsource things. You don't have to focus on as much stuff. You've got room to play. All these problems, we could say as a metaphor, are just variables that need testing, and having money allows you to test. You can't really test without money. Like, for example, the whole idea of cleaning and chores and doing stuff like that, that could be seen as a problem. But as soon as you start getting budget, you can outsource that and maybe get a maid or something to come and clean your apartment once a week. That's one problem. Or another problem is you're meal prepping your food and you can't seem to find the time to meal prep and, you know, have enough meals and calories in a day. If you're like me and you're kind of health conscious and you want to have a certain amount of calories so you don't look like either a twig or obese, you're going to have to prep your food every day. That's the problem, right? Because with my food, like eating steak, for example, you can't exactly prep a week's worth of steak, or the steak's going to be gross as you reheat it. So something I'm doing right now, and I have to do until I get the budget to outsource, I have to cook my steak fresh every day, because I don't like to have stale steak. I guess I could, right? But I don't like that idea. So what I've been doing is just cooking my steak every day. But I understand, and the way I'm able to just deal with that problem and not really let it face me too much is that as soon as I start getting budget with the business and I start scaling this and like getting this thing up and running and getting it really working and become profitable, I can outsource this pretty much straight away and get a chef and you can cook my meals, because my meals are pretty straightforward, right? So it's not too much stress. I want to go back to the idea of that business. The great thing about SMMA and whatever else is that as soon as you overcome a problem one time, you can kind of just make a note of it maybe in your mind or write it down somewhere as like a framework for yourself, and then you never have to go through that total uncertainty and that total procrastination again. Like when you're setting up a client for the first time and you're doing onboarding, and then you've got all these different problems. Like, for example, the course I brought didn't tell me about all these different problems I was going to face when onboarding a client. Like, I need access to their Google business account so I can work on their Google business reviews. I need access to their Facebook page, and like how to do it all in a seamless way, what don't take up a lot of time. How do I request their content from them? Like, how do I get access to their social media page and like all the permissions I need? When you do it for the first time, it becomes a lot more easy because a lot of that conscious effort is removed. That's the issue. The issue is the conscious effort and the unknowingness, so you're kind of moving towards it slowly. This is why when you're ever approaching anything that's new, you should allocate more time than you think you need for it, because there's going to be that inevitable hesitancy towards it. And you know, Robert Cialdini talks about this idea of click run, which is humans and all animals. For example, turkeys, we want to automate things to make it easier, because if it was paying constant attention to everything, it wouldn't even make sense. So turkeys, for example, I don't remember it 100% now. I know Robert Cialdini talks about it in his book, but essentially their way of automating and making their life simple is that their way of recognizing their babies is through their chirping. But to such an extent, I've mentioned this in another video before, if you've watched that other video and you're thinking, he's already said this before. I know. They automate the chirping to such an extent, they could take a prey of theirs, which I think might be a cat or a wolf or something, attach the chirping noise to them, and then the turkey's going to adopt the predator as if it was their own child, just because of their automatic biological response. The reason why I'm mentioning that is to give a little bit of context to the extent which us as animals, we want to automate things in our life. So all you've got, like, a human is just a product of their automations and their habits. A habit is just an automation, right? So we are just a product of our habits. And if we talk about the book by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, the cue, we get a cue, we act, and then we get a reward, right? So, and that is the automation loop. I'm not going to go into much more detail on that. You can read the book Power of Habit. You can read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. You can watch my video. I don't even remember what it's called, to be honest, but I do talk about habits more. I feel like I talk about habits at least one point in every single one of my videos. But essentially, we are just our automation. So everything is going to be hard, is what I'm trying to say, starting out. We could go even to the gym, for example. Training is hard. Getting the right form and all the different exercises is hard. Having a training split is hard. Actually getting to the gym is hard. Having the energy to push through and like motivate yourself if you haven't got a training partner is hard. Eating the right amount of calories is hard. And something that makes it a lot harder is the environment you're in. If you're in an environment where people aren't doing that and they're not pushing their willpower and they're not directing their willpower in that direction, it's just going to feel completely hard, right? This is why it's so important to be around people who are normalizing the things and skills that you want, because it just makes it so much easier, right? For example, when I'm at my parents' house and I'm trying to eat healthy and I'm weighing out my food so I can make sure I get 3,000 calories in a day, then my parents are just eating McDonald's. It's like, why do I even bother, right? Versus now, I live with my girlfriend and we both weigh our food out. We're both talking about calories. We're both talking about carb balances because we're both keto, right? And we've just got that accountability. It's a lot more better because I know if I mess up, I'm going to have to face that to her. And I don't really want to deal with the shame of that, you know, on a really superficial level. So you've got environment playing into problems as well. Like, your environment helps a lot with your problems is what I'm trying to say. Another example as well is YouTube. I'm not really too well averse with the whole idea of YouTube. And even now I feel a little bit, just a teeny bit of resistance when it comes to shooting videos. I have a little bit of self-doubt. I'm like, ooh, am I going to be able to talk on the topic that I've chosen? Like, who am I to even talk about this topic? Like, I still deal with it myself and blah 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 blah, and all this little knackering in my head and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, even when I shoot the video, I've got to edit it and blah blah blah. I've got to shoot a thumbnail, and then I've got to do this consistently. Like, you know what I mean? I've got to come up with good video ideas and all these different things, right? Which I guess was a little bit easier because I have done video YouTubes in the past. Like, my first YouTube channel is still out there. It maybe has like it's like 12 years old, right? So I did do YouTube in the past, but I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea what I was doing. So I'd just shoot a video, not have a consistent posting schedule. I'd just post whenever, and I knew nothing about keywords or like targeting or, you know, increasing my retention. I didn't know anything about that. I used to just post a video and go about my day. I had a video when I was like 12 years old with my scooter account. I had a video when I was like I had a YouTube channel, sorry, not video, when I was like 18, 19, 20 doing my modeling videos. So, you know, I've done YouTube before, which makes it a little bit easier. But like I said, I had no idea what I was doing when it comes to talking on camera. Talking on camera is a skill in itself, right? It's actually really difficult to do. And you can sit back and watch a YouTube video and never really consciously pay attention to all the skills that you're witnessing when you're watching a video. You're watching, like, if you're watching a good YouTube video, you're watching somebody who's learned how to talk on camera, how to edit the videos in a way that captures attention, how to position themselves in a way where you'd even want to pay attention to what they're saying, you know, good editing, good thumbnail, good titling. Like, there's loads of different things what come into even YouTube videos, for example. But I think the most important thing, the thing what enables me to be really consistent with all the different things I'm balancing right now, even though they're all new, is just that my expectations are aligned. I realize that nobody's more luckier than me, nobody's overriding this, and everybody's got these problems, and that's just what happens when you're doing new things. What I'm trying to say is, an indicator of that you're moving in the right direction and you're making progress in life is that you've got a lot of these different problems around you, because it means you're trying new things. And, you know, to get a result that you've never gotten before, you've got to do things that you've never done before. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. All that these problems are is just feedback that you're not insane. You're completely sane and you're trying new things, you're learning new skills, and you're moving in the right direction. As for existential problems, the only thing you can really do is just put it into perspective. So I'm not going to sit here and minimize the problems that you might be facing. There could be all kinds of different things, maybe a parent dying or like all kinds of crazy things. But I guess the only thing you can do is realize that you're not alone and that, you know, loads of people have overcome the problem that you are. And the good thing about humans as a whole and civilization as it's evolved from like thousands of years, right? Us as humans, we've been around so many times, we've literally seen everything there is to see. Like, I find it very hard to believe that you're experiencing something that somebody hasn't experienced before and overcame. So there's that part in itself. You can kind of just seek out books of problems that you're facing that are like more larger problems. It just comes down to perspective. Like, you know, there's different people who live in third world countries who are going through like war. Like, they're in war zones right now, and it's even being alive is risky because they could just get bombed or something like that. Or there's people who are just really unlucky, like maybe they've got in a severe car crash and they've got an expensive car what they can't exactly afford and it's been written off. Or, you know, you've got people who just got fired from their job and they've got nowhere to go. So there's all these different things, problems that people have what are just bigger than you, but also understand you're a human and you're very resilient. And you can overcome so much when it comes to problems and different stuff. It just comes down to your perspective and, you know, sometimes just taking out, like maybe just step out sometimes. Because when you're constantly enmeshed in something, you kind of get this banner blindness where you can no longer see the stimulus because you become numb to it. It's like the idea of where if you say the same word 100 times, like tree, 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 and I say it 100 times, you kind of become numb to it because you've heard it so many times. It's like your awareness of it is just gone in that moment until you go away, focus on something else and then come back to it. So sometimes some problems, you see, maybe not so much catastrophic ones, but like problems what are really annoying and just playing on your mind, sometimes you just got to leave it behind. Because there's this idea that like back in the day a lot of the work was laborious work, it was physical work. So you could labor your day, you could go about your day, labor, strive and whatever, but as soon as that clock hits 5 p.m. for example and you clock out, you don't really have to think about it anymore because it's physical work and you can kind of just leave it there and go do something else and restore and relax and pay attention to other things and just live your life. But now the way work is structured and stuff and just life in general, there's just so much more, like the work and our professions are a lot more mental based. So, you know, like management positions, admin, and a lot more mental work, like even a marketing agency, for example, it's a lot more mental, it's a lot more strenuous. And what can happen is you never really switch off. So you're constantly just paying attention to work all the time. And then that's going to be obviously going back to the idea of saying the same thing so many times you become numb to it. You're going to be working yourself so much without even realizing you're just going to become numb to everything. So you've got to really, when it comes to mental work and stuff, make sure you're checking out and make sure you're really just dropping it and creating boundaries. Because like, for example, what I'm doing with my entrepreneurship stuff, it's very easy to just burn the midnight oil, if you like, and just keep going and keep going and keep striving and swear you're being productive and swear you're being in a monk mode or a nightmare mode or whatever you want to call it. But you really do need to tune out sometimes. Sometimes problems just need avoiding. I know some people are genetically predisposed to completely avoid their problems, so it just comes down to self-awareness. Are you someone who's more likely to ignore their problems altogether, like you're a bit more avoidant when it comes down to it, or you're somebody like me who's type A and just completely fixates on their problems? I guess the remedy to your solution depends on what side of the scale you're on. The biggest perspective shift what I had is that nobody's lucky. Nobody's just living this problem-free life. And if they are, anybody who's not experiencing a lot of problems in their life is because they're not trying anything new and they're not expressing themselves. And you know, the major law of life is if you're not going ahead, you're going backwards. I know we all suffer the fate of entropy since we all die, and entropy essentially is the idea that things deteriorate over time. We're all doomed to entropy, right? But do you want to live your life really expressing yourself and getting that full expression of life? You get to overcome all these different challenges and problems, but you come out on the top with a completely raised perspective on life. You get to, you know, enjoy the fruits of your labor. You get to enjoy success. You get to enjoy the finer things of life. I can't even embark onto you and allow you to be aware of the extent to which how life good can get, because I'm not even there yet. My perspective and how I see things now compared to when I was 17, it's night and day. Like how I see life right now, my worldview is insane just because I've taken on all these problems in my life and kind of just kept going, right? So this is my conclusion. I'm not going to say any more, but I hope what I said has helped. The structure hasn't been very solid. Like I said, I don't follow a script like all these other YouTubers. I kind of just freestyle, because what I want to do by, you know, practicing that skill of freestyling my videos is actually learn how to talk on camera as opposed to learn how to read from a script. You know what I mean? So this is why my videos aren't scripted. I'm just practicing. I actually want to get into the habit of picking up the camera and just recording every single day so I can get so good at videos. You're like, damn, this guy knows how to talk. So that's what it is. I'm just exercising my skill of talking on camera. And yeah, any problem that you've got in your life, realize this too shall pass. And it's just an indicator that you're alive and you're not stagnating and rotting away. So namaste, I'm out of here.